Tonight, for a very brief period of time, for maybe 3/4 of an hour, we will try to discuss some of the things that happened 26 years ago on New Year's Day, 1994. What are some of the origins of that uprising in Chiapas, which was transmitted the world over and which was perhaps in certain ways a sequel of one of the most important revolutionary movements of modern history, the Mexican Revolution, which is still being debated and which is still alive in the minds of many people. We will also be discussing the events from that New Year's Day 1994 on, and some of the relations they have with other things that happened in Mexico prior to and after those events. Things that dealt with the student movement, with the guerrilla movement that was going on in and outside of Mexico, with the causes of this unrest, how it was dealt with, and in a certain way, perhaps, to conclude, what's the state of this, I shouldn't call it Zapatista movement because that was another political movement at the beginning of the 20th century, but let's call it the Zapatista Army movement, Ejército Zapatista de Liberación Nacional, or EZLN, as it is known in Spanish, and what are some of the repercussions of that movement in a larger scene, not only of Chiapas, but of Mexico and of Latin America.
Start talking about the neo-Zapatista movement. It's about the origin of the movement. I think it's a useful vision to try to see the Zapatista movement as part of the post-revolutionary guerrilla movements in Mexico. And of course we have the Mexican Revolution, which started in 1910. And which is available when it ended. But the thing is, it was an unfinished process. It was an unfinished revolution that left many social issues to be solved, to be resolved. And I think the Zapatista movement is part of this. The first important guerrilla movement in Mexico from the post-revolution is the Madera, Chihuahua uprising in 1965. There is also the Lucio Cabañas movement in Guerrero, el Partido de los Pobres, 1967. The Movimiento de Acción Revolucionaria in 1969. The Liga Comunista 23 de septiembre in 1973. And this one, the Fuerzas de Liberación Nacional, they are the direct antecedent of the Zapatista movement. They began in 1974. They established themselves in Chiapas in 1983, and they began working with the communities over there. It was a different movement, guerrilla movement from the different from the others in several aspects. But still, and I want to stress this point, still it's very poorly known in Mexico, the guerrilla movements from the post-revolutionary period. This is still a part of history that we should see in another light, and there are still many stories to be told in this respect.
Manuel Bartolomé de las Casas, who was the author of La brevísima descripción de las Indias, was one of the first Spanish chronistas who actually mentioned the oppression of the indigenous people of the region that most 500 years later they rebelled in 1994. So this is not only about the guerrilla movement of the 1960s or 1970s in Mexico, but it goes way back to the beginning of the colonization of the Spanish colonization.
1994 was the year that NAFTA would have started as such, so it was a complete surprise. You had all this vision of a modernizing state guided by the then president Carlos Salinas de Gortari, and which had all this modernizing vision of the country, which its neoliberalist view of progress. And then suddenly you had this uprising which said, excuse me, but like Subcomandante Marcos said in one moment, excuse me, but we're having a revolution, no? So stating that from all the external appearances of progress, of economical progress and social progress, there were many things still pending.
They took land, tenencia de tierra, the land was very important. But after the...
Well, that has been important.
It has been, and it's still important. It's still important since the Mexican Revolution, 1910, actually. But they took those lands, but actually when the peace talks, the first negotiation was about the indigenous rights. So you see that there is a different claims to the state. And right now, actually, until 1912, 1913, I believe, with the peace talk after the state, actually, they didn't went that further. They started autonomies in different municipalities. I believe that you have something to say about that.
Yes, I think that's one of the achievements of the movement in the very end. Although they did not finish this national revolution, they created these 32 autonomous self-governing
which are
municipalities.
parallel structure, right?
Exactly.
They are not recognized by the state.
They are not recognized by the state. They are surrounded by the army, but they are self-governing and autonomous. And I think the kind of life that they live within there, I think it's part of the important teachings of the Zapatista movement. No, that kind of freedom, that kind of communal participation in the decisions. I think that's one of the most valuable lessons from the movement.
Oh, I know that Luis was there in the, I believe, late 90s, and he has some personal experiences regarding that, and I would like you to relate them if you can.
I see that the common ground is the aspect of how they try to make themselves being equal in a very unequal situation. One of the things that they have the courage to do is to deal with education and try to get better schools. It's amazing the way that the Zapatista movement have developed a very unique kind of a curriculum, and they have it all over the place. And one of the things that I know that Luis, but I'm going to go ahead with that, but through the internet, we were able to provide to our students, as I mentioned before, we provide lesson plans that they have available on the internet, and we show that to our students. And it's very similar to the curriculum that we just mentioned earlier about plain history, because they actually teach them how is the importance of the land, and obviously the importance of getting involved in technology. And with that, I will believe that we should talk about that aspect of technology and the importance of technology of this particular movement.
I believe after that selection passed, now we don't hear a lot about the Chiapas region, the insurrection, because of the same reason. So it's a double-edged thing. There is no many reporters or many other media going to Chiapas right now. So in a way, it was very important during that time, during maybe 10 years. But right now, 26 years after that, you don't have that kind of presence in the media right now internationally. So it was very good for a time, but right now it doesn't have the same effect.
One thing that Marcos addressed on his, it was like his farewell ceremony, his farewell letter to the war, which was, it was in May of 2014, exactly 20 years since the creation of the movement. And he said that Marcos, the persona of Marcos was, he was destroying that. He was just like a puppet that it was useful for the movement at the moment, and the media trivialized that figure, and it was the moment to destroy it. But I think that it was, that declaration, it was kind of late. It was, I mean, it was destroyed before that because of lack of interest of the people. And also, and I think that the new media, and I'm referring to the new social media, the Twitter or Facebook, it doesn't fit with the length of the communiques or with the way in which Marcos articulated all his discourse. I do not see Marcos using Twitter, for example. He was very verbose. He was he was part of this very baroque Mexican tradition of use of language, which is excessive. So I don't see him writing 140 characters, reducing its thought. Probably he can. I don't know, but that is also part of why the movement, in some aspects, kind of lost its charm.
So probably, I don't know, they probably gonna reinvent themselves and they're gonna probably use those media again. I don't know.
I hope so, because the social issues are still there.
Exactly.
So
it's
it's
a
not that
beautiful-
they are solved. So we really need something to address those problems, not only in Chiapas but in the whole of Mexico, beginning with democratization of the country, real democracy, and real social solutions for the social injustice that Mexico is living.
It has another way to reflect on themselves in terms of the ideology. This movement in 1960, especially after the Cuban Revolution, which was very important in terms of the model that others guerrilla movement used in the 1970s, 1980s, the ideology was a Marxist ideology in particular. And the Chiapas movement, there was some components of class, but also it was a very ethnic movement, which is also very different from the other guerrilla movement in the 1960s and 1970s.